So now I'm going to flip this around, and I'm going to put the board out that way. And I'm going to gather up my robot. I have to zoom out for this because the robot's a little bit bigger. Turn it away from you like that. So now, each one of your servo motors has a cable that looks like this. And there's 3 wires in it. In this order right here, brown, red, orange. Brown is going to be our ground wire. That's going to go to the minus or the blue bar on our breadboard. Red is going to be positive, or the plus red bar of our blue bar, breadboard. And orange, this orange wire has to connect to our output side of our microprocessor. So let's start by connecting those first. And I did the same thing on this side of the board as I did on the other side of the board. I used these little pins and I broke them off so that they fit in the slots where they need to fit. And I just took them and pushed down on the little plastic piece to even it out so that the plastic piece was right in the middle. And I just plug them in to turn all of these pins into pins instead of holes. Now the pins that we're going to use on this side are 9, 6, 5, and 3 to match up with the pins that we wrote into our program. The motor that you attach where doesn't matter too much, but wherever you attach a motor to one of these pins is going to map up with one of these knobs back in one of the potentiometers. So if you don't like the order of the potentiometers, you can solve that by just switching up the wires on this side to get the motors in the order that you would prefer. But I'm going to start by grabbing this bundle again that has pins and holes. I'm going to pull one off, and I'm holding right now the motor that goes into the base of the robot. Let me zoom back out again so you can see. So this is the motor that's attached down to the base at the bottom, and the wire comes out the back like this. And I'm going to plug my wire male end into the orange wire in this little connector here. And then the other side, I'm going to plug onto my microprocessor in position 9. And you can see the numbers on the board are right next to the pins where they match up to. Next, I'll take the next motor, that's this one right here on my robot, and I'll do the same thing. I'll take the male end, I'll plug it into orange, and then I'll go to, this time, pin 6. Now the motor on this side, orange wire, plugs into pin 5. And the gripper, orange wire, plugs into pin 3. Okay, so let me zoom in there so you can get a better shot of what everything looks like. I should have 4 wires plugged into the output side of the Arduino board, 4 wires plugged into the input side of the Arduino board, and then some fun little spaghetti that's actually attached to my breadboard there. The last thing to do is to put power and ground onto each one of those motors. And let's see here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the male to male ones left over. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the male to female ones left over. And I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like I'm going to have to use some of those pins, if there's some left over, to plug into my board to turn some of those holes into pins. So I'm just going to take this and snap it. Plug it back in. And I'm going to plug these into my ground. So now I have these little pins sticking up from my ground right over here on my breadboard. So I can grab these wires that are holes and pins. I am by no means an expert cameraman, so please bear with me on this focusing issue, which my camera doesn't do on its own. And I'm going to take these and plug them into the brown wires, because these are going to be the grounds of each of my motors. So brown wire on the motor. Brown wire on the motor. Brown wire on the motors. I'm missing the motor here. There's one. And this last one is the base one. There. Now, I've connected all the brown wires from the motor to a spot on the blue line on the breadboard. Now I can take my remaining bundle of the male to male pins and connect the red wire on the motors to a red spot on the breadboard. Oops. And just make sure that they plug all the way in. They should be nice and flush in the socket like that. And everything should line up nice. That looks like a black bar on the camera, but there's 3 wires on this side and this one connector on the other side, matching up these 3 wires from the motor. And once again, the middle wire goes to the power side, or the red side, or the plus side. which are all the same thing. And there we go. So now, in this crazy tangle of spaghetti, I should have each one of my motors has 3 wires coming out of it, and those 3 wires should all be connected to ground to the brown, power to the red, and the Arduino board output on the orange. The last thing to do is to connect the power and ground of the Arduino board to the oops, I got one little wire that fell out on me. This is the ground wire. Okay. Perfect. So I have to connect the power and ground of the Arduino board to that red and blue line on my breadboard. So I will do that with one of those male to males on one of the places where it says ground. Actually, I'm going to do it to the place where it says 5V, 5 volts. And that's going to connect to the red bar. If I can squeeze it in there. Then I'm going to grab my last little guy here. And I'm going to connect this. The last wire I have is the one that has male to female. But I still have a pin left over on my little bar in my ground plane here. I'm going to connect that.